Hello friends. So today we are going to continue with the further part of thin film interference. Whatever we have discussed in the previous video, we are going to make use of those concepts and we are going to continue with the further part. Today we are going to talk about the concepts of methods of obtaining interference firstly. Secondly, we are going to talk about the parallel sided thin films, and then we are going to talk about the interference obtained in the parallel sided thin film, and then we are going to calculate the conditions for obtaining the maxima and the minima. So this is what we are going to discuss in today's video. So let's start with the concepts. So in thin film interference, we talked about the concepts of interference of light, which is the lights which are getting reflected from thin film are getting interfered or overlapped or getting superimposed, giving us either constructive interference or destructive interference. Thus, we get different interference, whether we say constructive or destructive, that is dependent on the interference of reflected lights which are getting reflected from the thin films of different material. Now, when you talk about the methods of obtaining this interference, are two methods which we approach mainly is division of wavefront and secondly is division of amplitude. Now, as you can look in the diagram, that when you talk about division of wavefront, that's a one method of getting the interference pattern. Second method to obtain the interference is division of amplitude. Now, if you want to get interference with the help of division of wavefront, in this way, we have to situate a single source of light which is going to be divided into two coherent sources in a form of narrow slits. So, to divide a single source into two or more sources, we can make use of the narrow slits. So, as you can see in the diagram, that we have the main source, that is S, and I'm dividing that S source into two wavefronts with the help of S1 and S2. And this S1 and S2 behaves as narrow slits. So, we are trying to divide the wavefront of the light with the help of two narrow slits, which is placed after the main source of light. So whenever we make use of the help of narrow slits, we are going to divide the wavefronts of the light wave. And when we divide the wavefront with the help of S1 and S2, that is narrow slits, we allow them to interfere. That is, the light waves which are coming after S1 and S2 are allowed to overlap or superimpose with each other, giving us the concept of interference. And for certain overlapping, like if it is a constructive overlapping, that is crest of one wave overlapping with the crest of another, trough of one wave overlapping with the trough of another, it will give rise to constructive interference, and the band which is going to be represented on the screen will be bright band. But if suppose the waves which are getting emitted after S1 and S2 are overlapping in a destructive manner, that is crest of one wave is overlapping with the trough of another, or trough of one wave is overlapping with the crest of another, in that case the destructive interference is going to occur and we are going to get a dark band on the screen. So in the similar manner, we get different patterns of dark and bright band, and that is what we call as interference pattern. So this is, we obtain interference with the help of division of wavefront, and simple division of wavefront is done by using the two narrow slits, so that the light waves which are coming from the two narrow slits are nothing but coming from the same source. So this two light waves from S1 and S2 can behave as coherent sources, because that is a must condition for the interference. Next, as you can see, the second method for obtaining interference is division of amplitude. Now in this case, what we do is we try to consider a source of light, and in that case we allow the light from the source of light to be incident on the surface of the thin film, and this incident ray undergoes partial reflection several times, and during the partial reflection, the amplitude of the incident rays gets divided several times. So, with the help of partial reflection, which is occurring at the interface, that is, as you can see, the incident ray is incident on the surface, that is top surface AB, and at that point it is undergoing partial reflection. This is the partial reflection part, and this is the partial transmission part. But as you can see, it is not only undergoing partial reflection only once, it undergoes partial reflection several times, giving us the division of amplitude. And this is what do we mean by division of amplitude of the source of light, or division of amplitude of the light waves which are getting emitted from the source of light. This light waves which are getting divided in the sense of amplitude, these lights are allowed to overlap or superimposed or interfered with each other, giving us the interference pattern. So these are the two basic methods of obtaining interference. One is division of wavefront using the narrow slits, obviously. And second, when you talk about the division of amplitude, you consider a ray of light and it undergoes partial reflection two or more times or several times, and that is going to give us the division of amplitude. Now, in this whole video, we are completely going to talk about the thin film interference. And please remember, thin film interference is obtained with the help of division of amplitude. So, when you do consider the method of division of amplitude, in that we talk about the thin film interference. So, as we are talking about thin film interference, so we need to consider the second method of obtaining interference, that is the division of amplitude. Now, when you say interference by division of amplitude, the amplitude of the light waves are getting divided, and the reflected light which we get as a result is going to get overlapped or superimposed, giving rise to the pattern called as interference pattern. Next is, as you can see in the diagram, that we have an optical medium, that is from surface A to surface B. It's the thickness of the film, so I consider it has an optical medium. So this yellow part which is indicated over here, it is indicated the optical medium. Now this optical medium is considered as a thin film, and the thin film is surrounded by the medium, that is air. Second thing, this thin film is going to have a certain thickness. Now the question arises, what should be the thickness of the thin film? So the question arises, what should be the thickness of the thin film? The thickness of the thin film should be of the order of comparable to the wavelength of light which is being incident on the surface of the thin film. So if you want to get a very proper interference using a thin film, you should keep in mind the thickness of the thin film should be almost comparable to the wavelength of the light which is falling or being incident on the surface of the film. So this is what is the condition for obtaining the thin film interference, or you can say this is the basic concept or basic requirement for obtaining thin film interference, which is nothing but the thickness of the film matters when you want to get an interference using that thin film. So what we consider is, we consider a thin film which is behaving as an optical medium, and that thin film has a thickness which is almost comparable to the wavelength of light which is falling on the surface of the thin film. Next is, what we keep in mind, that what should be the thickness of the film, what should be the range of the thickness of the film. Mostly we consider the thickness in the range of 0.5 micrometer to 10 micrometer. So if the thickness is in this range, we can consider the film to be a thin film. Secondly, as you can see, that I have considered optical medium as a thin film having two surfaces, that is surface A behaves as the top surface and the surface B behaves as the bottom surface. Next, if we can see, there is an incident ray which is coming and meeting at the point C at the top surface, and at point C the incident ray is undergoing partial reflection, and transmission. Now, the most important thing is that how much of the incident ray is undergoing reflection and how much part of the incident ray is undergoing transmission. So please keep in mind that whenever this thin film concept is considered, in that case, the incident ray which we consider undergoes strong transmission and weak reflection. So when you say incident ray, the small part of the incident ray will get reflected, and the major part of the incident ray is going to get transmitted in this film medium, or you can say the optical medium. And the ray is traveling from C to D. Again, it is getting reflected at the point D in that optical medium only. So that means again the transmitted light, that is CD light, is getting reflected, and again it is going to get transmitted in the other medium, that is after surface B. So what is the basic idea about is this, that whenever you consider incident ray, the small part of the incident ray is always going to undergo reflection and the major part is going to undergo transmission. So during thin film interference, you experience strong transmission and weak reflection. That is why, as we keep on moving in the further direction, like as the time progresses, what happens is that the intensity of reflected light goes on drastically decreasing, whereas when you talk about the transmitted light, it is not so much decreasing. So if the intensity of the reflected light goes on decreasing with the span of time, so what we are going to do is we're not going to consider those reflected light which is obtained later on. So to get a very good intensity for the interference, we consider only the first two reflected rays, this 1 and 2, because first of all, small part of the incident ray is getting reflected, so already the intensity is less, and as we keep on moving in the forward direction, what is going to happen, the intensity of reflected light will go on decreasing. So instead of preferring the decreased intensity of the reflected system, we prefer the intensity which is little bit visible, and the properly visible intensity of reflected light is obtained from the first two reflected ray, 1 and 2. So we allow this 1 and 2 reflected ray to overlap with each other or interfere with each other either in a constructive manner or a destructive manner, giving us rise to a interference pattern or giving us the array of colors which is obtained in a thin film. So this is how we talk about the thin film interference with the help of division of the wave amplitude. Next is, mostly when you talk about the thin film interference, we talk about the parallel sided films. What do you mean by parallel sided films is that you have a transparent medium, or you can say you have a transparent thin film of a uniform thickness, because the thickness is more important. As I said before, the thickness of the thin film should be almost comparable to the wavelength of light. So when we are trying to make, or when we are trying to consider plane parallel film, in that case we consider a thin film which is obviously transparent of a certain uniform thickness, and obviously the film should be bounded by two parallel surfaces. Like if I consider this as a film, so this is a thin film which is bounded by two surfaces, that is, this is the top surface and the below one is behaving as the bottom surface, and obviously the two surfaces are parallel to each other. So this is the way we make plane parallel film. So whenever we talk about plane parallel film, it should be transparent of a certain uniform thickness. I can consider the thickness to be small t, and this film is bounded by the two plane surfaces, that is the top and the bottom one. This is how we talk about the plane parallel film. Next is, as I've considered a thin film, which is specially of the type parallel films, or you can say plane parallel films. Next is to obtain the interference using this plane parallel film, or sometimes it is also referred to as thin parallel sided film. So How to obtain interference using a thin parallel sided film? What do we consider is, as I said, we have to consider a thin film which is bounded by the two surfaces. So as you can see in the diagram that we have the top surface over here, and then we have this has the bottom surface, and the thin film is of the thickness that is small t. Now from either side, the thin film is surrounded by air. When I look above the top surface, there is a presence of air medium. And if I look below the bottom surface, again I have the presence of air medium. Second most important thing, the thickness of the film is T, and this thin film is of a medium having a refractive index that is mu. So we have considered thin film of medium mu of thickness T. Next, as you can see, there are many rays of light indicated in the diagram. So let's look at what is the construction or what is the diagrammatically representation of thin film which is going to occur over here. So whenever we talk about the sources of light which we use for interference or thin film interference, the sources should be extended source. They should not obviously be a narrow sources. Now, what is the advantage of extended source over the narrow source? We are going to talk about it, but in the later part of the video. Next is, when I consider the thin film, as I showed in the diagram, of thickness T and having refractive index as mu, I consider an extended source of light which is just kept above the thin film, and that extended source is emitting a monochromatic light, that is light of single wavelength, and the wavelength is given by lambda. And out of all the rays of light which is coming from the extended source, I've considered only one ray, that is AB ray. Obviously it is being obtained from the extended source. Now we try to incident this AB ray of light on the top surface of the thin film. As this AB ray is incident at the point B, at point B, this incident ray undergoes a small part of reflection along the BR1. So BR1 indicates the reflected part, or you can say the reflected ray. And in the further part, at point B again, I'm saying at point B, there is a small part of reflection along BR1, and major part is transmitted along BC. So BC is behaving as a transmitted ray for the incidence occurring at point B. So this is indicated as the transmitted ray. Next, again at point C, which is lying at the bottom surface of the thin film, at point C, the transmitted ray again undergoes a small part of reflection, that is along CD. So we can consider even CD as the reflected ray, and DR2 is considered as the refracted ray because from C to D it is a reflection occurring in the thin film. At point D, it is again coming out of the thin film into air, so it is going to get refracted. This is what you talk about the transmitted ray undergoing partial reflection, and it is undergoing refraction along DR2. So DR2 is representing refracted ray because the medium is changing from thin film to air. Now once again, if we come to point C, at point C, the BC, that is the transmitted ray, has undergone small part of reflection along CD, and the major part is getting transmitted along CT1. So CT1 is indicated as transmitted ray, which is ultimately coming out of the bottom surface of the thin film. Again, as you can see at point D, the point D ray is again moving in the forward direction. D2E again behaves as a transmitted incident ray, and once the ray D comes to point E, D is the transmitted incident ray, and the small part of this ray is again going to get reflected in the same medium, and the major part is going to get transmitted along ET2, that is in the another medium which is below the bottom surface of the thin film. So if you look at the whole diagram, we have AB has an incident ray, BR1 has the reflected ray, DR2 has a refracted ray, BC is the first transmitted ray for the incident at point B, and at point C again there is a reflected ray which is moving along CD, but it is inside the thin film. At C there is one more transmission occurring when it is coming out of the thin film along CT1. So CT1 is indicating the transmitted ray, and again at point E, again a small part is getting reflected in the thin film and the major part is getting transmitted along the ray ET2. So we can say BR1 and DR2, which are the two rays which is considered in the reflected system. So in reflected system we consider two rays, BR1 and DR2, in the above part. And in the transmitted system we are going to consider two rays, CT1 and ET2. Because why I'm considering this four rays, for reflected system the interference is going to occur between the rays coming from BR1 and DR2 for reflected system, and for transmitted system the interference is going to occur due to two rays, CT1 and ET2. So you have to keep in mind that we are going to do two conditions. One is for the interference due to reflected system, and the second one is interference due to transmitted system. Now let's proceed with the further mathematical part of calculating or getting the condition for the interference. So once again, if I remind you that whenever we want to calculate an optical path difference which is written as optical path difference will be always written as mu times the geometrical path difference. So if I want to get optical path difference, first I need to find what is the geometrical path difference, then multiply it by the refractive index of the medium or the thin film, and with the help of this formula we will be able to calculate the optical path difference. Next is, with the further calculation, first what we are going to do over is we are going to calculate the method to get the value of optical path. Once I get the optical path or optical path difference, we are going to make use of that optical path difference to find the condition whether it is undergoing constructive interference or the condition for maxima, and using again that optical path difference we will find the condition for minima. So our first aim is to find the optical path difference. So let's start with calculating the optical path difference. Now as you can see in the diagram which I have shown over here, that is the same diagram which we have done previously, in that AB is considered to be the monochromatic ray of light having the wavelength as lambda, and at point B the ray is undergoing two phenomena, that is small part is getting reflected along BR1 and the major part is getting reflected along BC. And when you continue with the further diagram, in this case the ray BC is not stopping at C, because at again point C the ray is getting partially reflected and partially transmitted in the second medium, that is along CT1. So when I talk about two rays, that is BR1 and DR2, so we need to consider 2 points, that is BR1 and DR2. But when you talk about the BR1, that ray is directly coming after the reflection at point B. But when you talk about the ray DR2, it's not coming directly from point D. If you backtrace the ray DR2, it is backtraced as before point D, the ray was coming from point C, and as I backtrace it again, it was coming from point B. So when I talk about the ray BR1, that ray is directly coming from incidence occurring at point B. But when we talk about the ray DR2, it is getting reflected, or it is obtained from the ray which is coming from B. So if I ask you the obvious question, that in the two rays BR1 and DR2, which one has traveled a longer distance? Like BR1 is just traveling from B to R1, but the ray DR2 is not directly coming from D, it's actually coming from B. So for DR2, the ray has traveled from B to C, then from C to D, then it is coming to the point that is R2. So if you talk about BR1, the BR1 ray is directly coming from B to R1. But if we talk about the ray DR2, the ray starts from B, comes to point C, and again at C you suffer partial reflection, C to D, and again from D to R2. So if I ask you again, which ray of light, that is BR1 or DR2, which one has traveled a longer distance? So obviously the answer to it is that DR2 has traveled a longer distance as compared to BR1. So if I get the two path, which is obviously not equal, one ray of light has a smaller path and the other ray of light has a longer path. So can we calculate the path difference between them? That is, path difference will be written as the longer path minus the smaller path. Now as you remember that DR2 is tracing a longer path and BR1 is tracing a smaller path. So if you want to get path difference, we have to calculate the path BCD in film, which is the longer path, minus the path BM in the air, which is nothing but the smaller path. So if you want to calculate what is the path difference, first what we do is we drop a perpendicular from D to point M, and if we drop that perpendicular, the extra path which is traveled by the ray of light will be the BM path. So in this case, we are getting two rays, that is BR1, and the second ray is the DR2. When we look at the BR1 ray, it is actually getting originated from the main source, that is A. But when you look at DR2, it's coming from D, backtracing it to point C, again backtracing to the point B, and ultimately if you look at the original source, it is again A. So if I talk about BR1 or whether I talk about DR2, has this both the rays are obtained from the same source or the same ray, that is AB. So we can call this both the rays BR1 and DR2 to be coherent, because they are obtained from the same sources. First thing. Secondly, as you can see, after reflection at point B, BR1 is the one reflected ray. But when you talk about DR2, DR2's main reflection is occurring at point B, and from B it is going to the path, that is a long path BC, then again getting reflected at C and meeting at point D. So when you look at DR2, DR2 has traveled from B to C, C to D, and then D to R2. So if I look at the both the path of both the rays, that is BR1 and DR2, obviously DR2 has traveled a longer path as compared to BR1. So if we have two paths over here, so we need to calculate using the two path. So using the two path, we need to calculate the path difference between the two rays, that is BR1 and BR2. So what is the method of calculating the path difference? So to calculate path difference mathematically, what we need to draw in this particular diagram, we need to draw a perpendicular from point D to the ray BR1. So as you can see in the diagram, there is a perpendicular DM dropped from point D at the ray BR1. So to find the path difference, we have dropped the perpendicular from D to M. Now after point D, and after point M, the path of the rays are equal. That is, we can say after point D, that is dr2 path is equal to mr1. So that means it concludes that after point M, the path is equal of both the rays. mr1 is equal to dr2. But before bm, or you can say before M, the extra path which has traveled is nothing but bm. So to get the path difference between the two rays, that is br1 and dr2, we are dropping a perpendicular. After point D and after point M, the rays are traveling equal path. So what is the path difference between the two rays is bm. Now, if you want to calculate the path difference between the two rays, that is br1 and dr2, so for br1, the path is bm, because after m the path is equal, so we don't need to consider that. So we have considered path bm. So path bm is small. But when you talk about dr2, after point D, d2r2 is the of equal length as compared to mr1. But when you look at D point, the rays are actually coming from B. So from point B, there are two rays getting emitted. That is, one is from B R1 and other one is B2C, C2D and R2. So BM is the extra path for the ray in the air medium, and for the rays which are inside the film, the extra path is B2C and C2D. So the extra path traveled by both the rays is nothing but, for dr2 the extra path is b2c c2d, or you can say the path bcd in the film, and for ray br1 the extra path traveled is bm. So if I take the difference between the two paths, I will get the path difference. So to get the path difference, I have considered delta. Delta is indicating the optical path difference, which is taken as, obviously, when I compare BM and B2C and C2D, the BCD path is greater as compared to BM. So I've subtracted path BCD in film minus path BM in air. Now, why have I specified film and air? Because when I talk about film, that path BCD lies in the medium. So I need to consider the optical path. And when I talk about the path BM, in air, we have to consider the geometrical path. So BM is the shortest path, so it is considered to be the geometrical path. And when you talk about path BCD, it is lying in the medium of refractive index mu. So if I want to get optical path over there, optical path will be nothing but mu times the geometrical path. So this is the geometrical path. So to get optical path difference, you have subtracted the optical path difference minus the geometrical path. Now, if you want to calculate what is the optical path of BCD in the thin film, in that case, the formula is optical path is nothing but mu times of geometrical path. So mu is the refractive index. Now, what is the geometrical path of the ray BCD? It's BC plus CD. So mu into geometrical path gives me optical path minus BM is already an optical path or geometrical path in air, which is always going to remain same. So to get the optical path difference delta, I have taken the path, optical path BCD in the film minus the path BM in air. So we are getting an equation mu BC plus CD minus BM. Next is, using the diagram, obviously, we need to calculate what is the value of BC, what's the value of CD, and what is the value of BM. Now, if you look at the diagram, if I look at the angles which are drawn in the diagram, in that case, AB indicates the incident ray, and there is a normal which is present over here. So the angle between incident ray and the normal is called as angle of incidence. And when you talk about refracted ray with the normal, the angle is called as angle of refraction. So, as you can see, BC is the refracted ray, which is forming an angle R with the normal, that is, R is indicating the angle of refraction. So, we have two angles over here, that is, angle I and angle R. I indicates the angle of incidence and R indicates angle of refraction. Next is, when you say BCD, that is the path of the light in the film, we need to calculate what is the value of BC and we need to calculate what is the value of CD. Now, if you look at the diagram, we can consider two triangles over here, that is BC N dash, and the second triangle which we can consider over here to calculate CD can be considered as D N dash C. So we have considered two triangles over here, that is BC N dash, and the second triangle which we can consider over here is at D N dash C. Now, why have I considered these two triangles? So that I can calculate the BC value and the CD value. So if we try to calculate by considering these triangles, we can calculate the BC and CD value. So if I calculate the BC value using the first triangle, that is triangle B N dash C or triangle BC N dash, in that this is the angle R. Now if this is angle R, I've taken cos R. According to trigonometry, cos R is nothing but adjacent upon hypotenuse. So if I look at the adjacent, so cos R is going to have adjacent as C N dash, and the hypotenuse part is going to be BC. So if I get this value, so in the triangle B N dash C, we are calculating the value of cos R. So cos R in triangle B N dash C, cos R will be nothing but adjacent upon hypotenuse. So adjacent is nothing but C N dash divided by the hypotenuse is BC. So if I consider C N dash in the diagram is nothing but the thickness of the film. So if I consider C N dash as T divided by BC, next we can consider the second triangle, that is C N dash D. So if I consider triangle C N dash D, in this case the cos R again is going to be adjacent upon hypotenuse. Now when you say adjacent is again going to be C N dash, but the hypotenuse is going to be CD. C N dash is nothing but T by CD. So if you look at both the equations, BC is equal to, shuffle the equations. So by shuffling both the equations, we can get the value of BC and CD. BC as well as CD is going to have the same value, that is T by cos R. So if you look at this equation, we have written BC is equal to CD is equal to T by cos R. That is, we have found out the two values of BC plus CD, that is the optical path traveled by the light in the thin film of medium having refractive index mu. Second, like if you look at the first part of this equation, it is mu in a bracket BC plus CD. As I told you, BC and CD is going to have the equal value. So BC plus CD is going to be the 2 times of that value multiplied by mu is going to give me 2 mu T divided by cos R. So that's the value of the first term of the optical path difference. So we have calculated the first term of the optical path difference. Next thing is that we need to calculate what is the value of BM. Now, if you look at the diagram, in this case, BM is considered over here in the air medium. Now, as you can see, there is an angle I over here. Now, when I consider this has an angle I, that is, we need to consider a triangle, which is triangle BM D dash, or you can consider that triangle to be BM. So if we consider that triangle BMD, that is in triangle BMD, angle D is your angle of incidence. So if I calculate the sine I value from this triangle, that is triangle PMD, sine I will be opposite upon hypotenuse. So for angle D, that is angle I, opposite is BM and hypotenuse is BD. So from this particular triangle, we can write sine I is equal to, opposite is BM and adjacent is BD. So I can get a value BM is equal to BD into sine I. So we got the value of BM. As you can see, we have written BM is BD into sine I. Now, if you look at the diagram, the distance BD is divided into two equal parts by the point N dash. So we can write BD as 2 times of BN dash. So instead of BD, I'm making use of 2BN dash into sin I. So the value of BM we are getting as BM is equal to 2BN dash into sin I. Next, if we want to calculate the further part of BN dash, again we need to consider the triangle over here. The triangle which we are going to consider is nothing but the second triangle which we are considering is BN dash C. In this case, the angle C is indicating the angle of refraction. So to get the value of BN dash, I'm going to calculate the value of tan R, that is in angle BN dash C. Angle C is indicating the angle of refraction, and from there, using trigonometry, we are calculating the value of tan R. Tan R from the equation is going to be, tan R is taken to be opposite upon adjacent. So if I look at opposite term is BN dash divided by the adjacent term of angle R is CN dash. So are we getting BN dash has CN dash times of tan R? So instead of BN dash, we can write CN dash tan R. But as we are aware, CN dash is nothing but the thickness of the film. So instead of CN dash, we can write T, that is the thickness. So in this above equation, that is equation 1, we can say that 2 is going to remain as it is, this 2, and BN dash is getting replaced by T into tan R, and sin I is remaining as it is, sin I. So are we getting the value of BM as 2T tan R into sin I? When I say tan R, in again trigonometry, we use tan R as sin R by cos, or tan theta is sin theta by cos theta. So instead of tan R, we are writing sin R by cos R. So as you can see, BM is 2T. Instead of tan R, we have written sin R by cos R into sin I. When we calculate this term further, what I do is, I multiply this equation by sin R and divide it by sin R. Why? Because if you look at the terms, then sin I divided by sin R is nothing but going to give me a refractive index. Now this equation is obviously given by the law called as Snell's law. As we are aware, Snell's law is nothing but refractive index is equal to sin I by sin R. So that is why, to get the refractive index or to use the Snell's law, I have multiplied the above equation by sin R and divided by sin R. So if I, instead of sin I by sin R, using Snell's law, if I am making use of sin I by sin R as mu, so 2 is going to remain as it is. Sin I by sin R is written as mu. T is going to remain as it is, divided by cos R. But if you look in the numerator, I have two sin R terms, so it is going to get together and going to give me sine square r. So the ultimate equation of Bm is 2 mu t divided by cos r into sine square r. Now, if you remember, in the optical path difference between the two rays, we had written that optical path difference is nothing but mu bc plus cd minus the bm value, and mu into bc plus cd is the path measured in the film, and bm is the path which is measured in the air. So we have already calculated bc and cd, and the first term as well as the second term, that is bm. We're just substituting the values from there in this equation. So instead of mu bc plus cd, we are writing 2 mu t by cos r, and instead of bm, we are writing 2 mu t by cos r into sine square r. So if you look at both the terms, which is given by delta is equal to this term minus this term, because we are calculating the optical path difference, that is delta. So delta is written as the first term minus the second term. Can we take the common term outside? The common term is nothing but 2 mu t by cos r. In the bracket, I will get 1 minus sine square r. As we are aware, 1 minus sine square theta is written as cos square theta. So instead of 1 minus sine square r, I can write the term as cos square r. So this cos square r and this cos r will get cancelled, giving me the value of optical path difference as 2 mu t cos r. So we have ultimately calculated the value of optical path difference for the interference which is occurring due to the parallel sided film, or you can say thin film interference. So ultimately the optical path difference value is given as 2 mu t cos r. So we can say that the optical path difference is dependent on three values, that is refractive index, the thickness t, and the angle of refraction, that is small r. So optical path difference, that is delta, is dependent on all the three parameters. Next is, as we get the optical path difference, we need to find what is the condition for occurrence of maxima and minima. Obviously, the question arises that using optical path difference, how can we find the conditions for maxima and minima? If you remember in the previous videos, as we have talked about, the conditions for obtaining the constructive interference and destructive interference depends on the path difference. Like if we consider the path difference to be integral multiple of lambda, then the interference is called as constructive interference, or it will give me maxima, or it will give me a bright band. But if I get the optical path difference has odd multiple of lambda by 2, then I will get destructive interference, or that band is going to be minima, or that band is going to represent as a dark band. So depending upon the optical path difference, which condition is getting satisfied by it, we are going to classify the conditions for the maxima and minima. So that is why to obtain the maxima and minima, we had calculated the optical path difference. Now using that value, we will find what is the conditions for maxima and minima, or the conditions for obtaining bright band and the dark band, that is the interference pattern. Now when you say if two rays are getting added constructively, or if two rays are getting overlapped constructively, so the mathematical condition is that the optical path difference should satisfy the condition of integral multiple of lambda. Then it is going to be the constructive interference. So if you look at the rays, which is we are talking about BR1 and DR2, the first reflection which is occurring at point B for the BR1, the reflection is occurring at point B. As the point B is lying in the denser medium, that is the refractive index is more as compared to the air. So we can say this is the concept of hard reflection, because whenever the ray is incident on a medium of higher refractive index, the reflected ray is going to have the phase change of pi and path difference of lambda by 2. So when I consider point B over here, point B is nothing but at that point I'm getting a ray which is BR1. So when I consider this point B, from this point B, the reflection is occurring obviously, and I'm getting a ray that is BR1. If I get this ray BR1, what is happening at B, I have to determine whether it is a hard reflection or whether it is a soft reflection. So the condition for hard and soft is that whenever the ray is incident on a higher refractive index medium, it is going to result into hard reflection, giving me phase change of pi and path difference of lambda by 2. As you can look at this point P, this point B is getting reflected, or you can say the ray BR1 is getting reflected from the denser medium. So if it is getting reflected from the denser medium, the ray BR1 is nothing but the result of hard reflection. So it will undergo the phase change of pi and the path difference of lambda by 2. Second thing, if I talk about ray DR2, for ray DR2, the reflection is occurring at the point D. When we talk about the ray DR2, that DR2 ray is not getting actually reflected from point D, it's actually getting reflected from point C. And point C is nothing but lying inside the thin film, so there won't be any phase change over there or any path difference. So for the ray DR2, that is for point D, we obtain no phase change, or you can say no path difference. But when you talk about ray BR1, as the reflection is occurring at point B, and the point B is considered at the denser medium, because after point B, the ray is traveling from denser to air medium. So point B is nothing but having a phase change of pi and path difference of lambda by 2. So out of the two reflected rays, BR1 and DR2, the phase is only changing for point B, or you can say the path difference is only obtained for ray BR1, not for DR2, because at point B hard reflection is occurring, so phase change is pi and path difference is lambda by 2. For ray DR2, the reflection is actually occurring at point C, and the point C is inside the thin film, so there is no phase change at point C or no path difference. So if you look at both the rays, that is BR1 and DR2, we can say we have only path difference of lambda by 2 at only one point, that is B, and there is no path difference at point C. So when you talk about the overall optical path difference, as you can remember that in the previous case we had already calculated the path difference as 2 mu t cos r. Then we discussed the condition of how much is the path difference for point B for the ray BR1 and how much is the path difference for point D for the ray DR2. So out of both the rays, we got only one path difference, that is lambda by 2 for ray BR1. So if you look at the whole path difference, whatever we have calculated previously and now from the diagram, the total effective path difference which we are getting is 2 mu t cos r plus lambda by 2. So if you get this value, that is 2 mu t cos r plus lambda by 2 is indicated as the total effective path difference. So we have got ultimately the path difference previously has delta is equal to 2 mu t into cos r. That is our previous value of optical path difference. Then after conclusion that at point B there is a path difference of lambda by 2 because the reflection is occurring from the denser medium, that is, it is a hard reflection. And for the second ray, that is for point D, there is no path difference. So the path difference which we are getting from the concept of hard reflection and soft reflection is only lambda by 2, that is at point B. So if you want to calculate the total path difference between the ray BR1 and DR2, it is going to be 2 mu t cos R plus the lambda by 2 which is obtained at point B because the reflection is occurring from the denser medium. So delta is equal to 2 mu t cos R plus lambda by 2. We can indicate this equation as the effective optical path difference between the two rays, specifically between the two reflected rays, that is BR1 and DR2. So we got the equation for the effective optical path difference between the two reflected rays BR1 and DR2, which is 2 mu t cos R plus lambda by 2. Next is, if you want to use this total optical path difference to obtain the conditions for maxima and minima. Now, if you want to obtain the condition for constructive interference, that is to obtain maxima, the total optical path difference between the two rays, that is BR1 and DR2, should be integral multiple of lambda. That is, integral is nothing but integers. I am indicating the integers as n. So to get the constructive interference, or to get a bright band, or to get the condition for maxima, the total optical path difference between the rays should be equal to integral multiple of lambda, that is n lambda. So we get 2 mu t cos R plus lambda by 2 is equal to n lambda. That is one condition. Now if we try to obviously shuffle this equation and take the lambda by 2 on the other side, we are going to get the equation as 2 mu t cos R in the bracket 2n minus 1 into lambda by 2. Now when you say n is nothing but indicating the integers, obviously starting from 1, 2, 3, 4 all. And this condition which we have written over here, this is the condition for obtaining the maxima or the bright band or the constructive interference. And sometimes even this equation is written as 2 mu t cos R is equal to 2n plus 1 lambda by 2. So either you write the condition as 2 mu t cos R is equal to 2n minus 1 lambda by 2, or either you write the condition as 2 mu t cos R is equal to 2n plus 1 lambda by 2. Obviously, but if you write this condition, the n value is going to start from 1. But if you're writing this condition for maxima, it is going to start from 0, giving the same result, just the two methods of writing the same equation. So ultimately you have to remember over here that the optical path difference, or the total optical path difference between the two reflected rays BR1 and DR2, should be integral multiple of lambda to get the point as a maxima point or a bright band. And this is the final conditions, or the two final equations for the conditions to be satisfied as a point to be a maxima point. Next is, when you talk about the destructive interference, that is, when we talk about the destructive interference, that is the rays which are undergoing destructive interference. So I said if BR1 and DR2 undergo constructive interference, above is the condition which we are going to use. And when we talk about BR1 ray and DR2 ray undergoing destructive interference, for that case, the optical path difference between the two rays should be odd multiple of lambda by 2. So if I'm getting the optical path difference between the ray BR1 and DR2 to be odd multiple of lambda by 2, then the condition is going to be for destructive interference or the minima point or the dark band. So if you write the total value, like this 2 mu t cos R plus lambda by 2 is nothing but indicating the total optical path difference is equal to odd multiple of lambda by 2. Now if I want to write odd multiple, odd is written as 2n plus 1. So this is nothing but indicating the odd multiple of lambda by 2. Again, if we solve this equations, that is 2n plus 1 lambda by 2, and this equation, that is lambda by 2, ultimately we are getting an equation 2 mu t cos r is equal to n lambda, where n is starting from 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. Now this condition, that is 2 mu t cos r is equal to n lambda, is the obtained condition for a point to be a minima point, or for destructive interference to occur, or for the band to be a dark band. So using the optical path difference, whether it is an integer multiple of lambda or whether it is an odd multiple of lambda by 2, we have concluded that above is the condition for maxima and this is the condition for minima. So we have to obviously keep in mind what should be the condition for maxima to occur and what should be the condition for minima. But please remember, this we have only calculated the maxima and minima for reflected rays, that is BR1 and BR2. So this above is the conditions for the maxima minima for reflected ray or reflected system consisting of two rays, BR1 and DR2. Now next we have to calculate the condition for maxima and minima for transmitted system. Now what do you mean by transmitted system is that from point B to C, that is a transmitted ray, is further moving along CT1, and after point E, the ray is again moving further in the air medium along ET2. So we have ultimately two transmitted rays, that is CT1 and ET2. Now what we do is we again try to overlap these two rays, that is CT1 and ET2, which are behaving as a transmitted rays. We try to overlap them, and when we try to overlap them, we either get a constructive interference or a destructive interference. But if you look at the two transmitted rays, CT1 and ET2, they are originally getting obtained from the same original ray, that is AB. So we can consider these two rays, that is CT1 and ET2, to be coherent rays because they are obtained from the same ray AB. Now we are allowing the CT1 ray and ET2 ray to interfere. So if we allow them to interfere, we try to calculate the path difference between the two rays. Once I get the path difference, we get the conditions for the maxima and we get the conditions for minima. Now obviously, as I said before, to obtain the path difference in the diagram, we need to drop a perpendicular. Now, as we are talking about only two rays, that is CT1 and ET2, I am dropping a perpendicular from point E on the ray CT1, and the perpendicular is nothing but the perpendicular is written as EL. So we drop a perpendicular EL from point E on the ray CT1. Then we again keep on doing the same calculation as we have done for the reflected system. That is, we try to calculate the optical path difference, and optical path difference will be nothing but value of mu times the path traveled in the thin film minus the path traveled in air. Once we calculate that whole parameters again, the ultimate path difference which we get for the transmitted rays or for the transmitted system is delta is equal to 2 mu t cos r. So as you can remember, this is the same equation which we got for the reflected system. So the calculation for the reflected system is same for the transmitted system. Just over there we had used the reflected rays. Over here we are making use of the transmitted rays. And if you look at the path difference which we got from the diagram, it is delta is equal to 2 mu t cos r, which is the same as before. But when you look at the path difference which is occurring at point C and point D, why I'm talking about point D is that because the ray ET2 is originally coming from point D, So to calculate the path difference in the diagram, we need to consider 2 points for the rays CT1 and ET2. For the ray CT1, the point is considered to be C. For the ray ET2, the point is considered to be D, because we need to check what is the phase change or path difference at point C and D. As we can see that this point C is also lying at the thin film, and point D is again lying at the surface of the thin film. So we obtain no phase change for this particular both the points C and D, because even for point C the ray is remaining inside the thin film, and even for the point D the reflected ray is remaining inside the thin film. So when I talk about point C, the reflected ray is CD. When I talk about the point D, the reflected ray is DE. So whether I talk about the reflected rays CD or DE, they both are lying inside the thin film. So we agree that at points C and D, there is an occurrence of reflection. But both the reflected rays, that is CD and DE, is lying in the thin film. So at both the points C and D, there is no phase change, or we can say there is no path difference. So if there is no phase change or no path difference, so we can just write according to the point C and D, as the path difference and the phase change is 0. So the overall or the effective path difference between the rays CT1 and ET2 is nothing but given by the formula 2 mu t cos r, because we are not getting any phase change at the point C and D, as we were getting for the point B and D for the reflected system, but over here we are not getting any phase change for point C and D. So the effective path difference is going to be 2 mu t cos r only. So this gives me the equation of effective optical path difference between the rays, that is CT1 and ET2, that is both the reflected rays. So this is the effective path difference. Now using this effective path difference, we need to check that which type of interference is going to occur, whether it is a constructive interference or whether it is a destructive interference. So obviously we need to satisfy the condition, we need to check the conditions to get maxima or minima. So suppose if my optical path difference is equal to integral multiple of lambda, then obviously it gives me the condition of bright band or maxima or the constructive interference of transmitted rays. If the optical path difference is odd multiple of lambda by 2, it will give me the condition for minima or dark band or destructive interference. So if you can see that we have equated the optical path difference to be equal to integral multiple of lambda. So if optical path difference is 2 mu t cos r equal to integer multiple means n times the lambda, the condition is nothing but for the maxima condition or for constructive interference. But if the optical path difference is equal to odd multiple of lambda by 2, then it is the condition for destructive interference or the minima point or the dark band. So the equation 1 gives me the condition for maxima for transmitted system, and equation 2 gives me the condition for minima for transmitted system. So once we obtain these two conditions, we can get to know that when are we going to obtain maxima and when are we going to obtain minima. But obviously this whole conditions are considered in transmitted system. So we have done two conditions, that is one for reflected system and the other one for transmitted system. Now the most important thing over here is that if you look at the conditions for maxima and minima for reflected system, and if we look at the conditions for maxima and minima for transmitted system is just opposite of each other. The condition which is given for maxima in reflected system is nothing but the condition for minima in transmitted system, and the condition which is given for minima in reflected system is nothing but the condition for maxima in the transmitted system. So you just have to remember that the maxima minima condition for the two system, that is reflected and the transmitted system, is opposite of each other. Next is, if we are saying that we get interference either constructive or destructive with the help of two systems, that is reflected system and the transmitted system for the thin film, the question arises which interference is going to be of better contrast and which interference of which system is going to be of poor contrast. So suppose if I talk about the transmitted system, in transmitted system of the incident ray, the 100% of the light is obtained in maxima. That is, for transmitted system, if transmitted rays are undergoing constructive interference is 100% of the incident ray. And if the transmitted ray is undergoing destructive interference, it is 85% of the intensity of the incident ray. So, for transmitted system, or you can say for transmitted rays, the constructive interference, or for maxima, the intensity is around 100% of the incident ray. That is, the whole intensity is like completely bright. And minima, which is obtained for the transmitted rays, in that the intensity is around 85% of the incident ray. So if I compare, that is 100% intensity and 85% intensity, in that case you won't be able to distinguish that which one is more brighter, because it is almost equal to each other. So for transmitted system, has the maxima has 100% intensity as compared to the incident ray, and minima has the intensity of 85%, but as there is no large difference between the maxima and minima, the contrast which we get for the transmitted system, it is poor contrast. That is, we won't be able to identify which band is the maxima and which band is the minima, or we won't be able to identify which band is the bright band or the dark band. But once you come for the reflected rays or for the reflected system, in that case, for maxima, the intensity is around 15% of incident ray. Means intensity of bright band or intensity of maxima in reflected system is around 15% of the incident ray. And when I talk about minima, for minima the intensity is 0%. That is, I'm getting 0% intensity in the dark band of reflected system, and I'm getting 15% intensity of incident ray in the bright band of reflected rays. So if you compare 15% with 0%, obviously for the 0% the band is going to be completely dark with no light in that, and for 15% the band is going to have some light in that case. So if I compare the band of some light and with no light, I will be easily able to distinguish between the bright band and the dark band. So obviously, if I look at both the system, whether I talk about transmitted or whether I talk about reflected, if we look at the contrast which we obtain very much good contrast in reflected system as compared to transmitted. So what we can say is that the visibility of fringes is very much higher in reflected rays. When you say fringes, fringes is nothing but another word for band. So if obviously the condition, or if it is asked when is the visibility of fringes higher, whether for reflected system or whether for transmitted system, by looking at this condition of poor contrast and good contrast, we can conclude that the visibility of fringes or visibility of bands will be much higher in reflected system as compared to transmitted system. So we have talked about completely that what happens in the interference of division of amplitude. Then we talked about the parallel sided films. Then we talked about the interference occurring due to the parallel sided thin films. Then we talked about the conditions which we obtain for maxima and minima for two systems, reflected and transmitted system. And ultimately we got that the reflected system will have more visibility of fringes as compared to the visibility of fringes on the transmitted system, because we have good contrast in reflected system as compared to the transmitted system. So we prefer reflected system over the transmitted. This is all about the topic of conditions of maxima and minima. Thank you so much.